Well, hey there, it's Alka.
And Jen, and welcome to another episode of the Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur Podcast. And in this episode, we are talking about how if you don't think you have business skills, it doesn't mean that you cannot be successful on an e-commerce online business or with an e-commerce online business. And the main reason why we decided on this topic today for this podcast is because we tell ourselves a lot of stories sometimes, especially when we're in the e-commerce space and we are solopreneur or working on our online by ourselves. We can sometimes get in our own head and we can tell ourselves stories about certain things, like how we're not good at certain things and I don't understand this, or I'll never be good at this. And a lot of that revolves around business in terms of numbers and crunching numbers for your business and doing the analytics and actually making the business work for the actual business side point. We are creatives who work on an online platform called Zazzle, and we have made over $1.5 million combined on Zazzle. And Zazzle is a print-on-demand platform in the e-commerce online space. And because we are mixing creativity and business together, we are able to become successful. And a lot of Zazzle designers or people even in e-commerce or in the creative space think that, when you add business to the creativity side of things, it gets scary or it gets complicated or you can't do it because we're very, right or left brained in terms of those things. And so this podcast is to help encourage you and inspire you to understand that business can be easy even if you think you don't know the numbers. And numbers are very important because in the end you want to be profitable and you want to know that those numbers are working for you, but it shouldn't scare you. And I can say that with my own personal experience because numbers at one point paralyzed me. I didn't even want to open up my account to see what was going on because I just wanted to have fun creating and designing and being in the creative space. And the numbers just made me extremely nervous and scared to actually think about, okay, is this working for me or not? I would rather, neglect the numbers and neglect the actual business side of things, quote unquote, because I just didn't feel comfortable, giving myself the confidence to say, no, I've got this and I can actually see what's going on here. Because if you actually take that next step and you step into your business, like set of pants or whatever you want to call them, and you start to look at the numbers, even if it scares the living daylights out of you, it will help you so much more in the long run. And in this podcast, we're going to feature or talk about two of our students who have had issues in the past with numbers and they thought that they weren't capable, or they always said, it's really funny because even today sometimes they say, well, I'm not a numbers person, so I don't understand that, or I don't get that. And we say, yes, you are a numbers person, or you can do this, because it's just making it
Perspective, really.
but then also understanding it in little bits and pieces the way that you're able to understand it, and then in the end you actually understand the whole chunk of everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a knack of helping people who are not big on numbers and very much introverts and also like creatives that are a little bit afraid of business, to understand that business doesn't need to be scary. Not only just the numbers, but also the management side of things, and also all that baggage that comes with it, right? And maybe you're not even ready to hear the baggage part because that's maybe a negative thing for you to say, but we had baggage. We had all of these wonderful mindset things about, you can't make money being creative. Well, there's a stopper right there in terms of being able to say, okay, I want to try this business. It's like right away, everything in the background is going like, danger, danger. Don't tell me that I should make money on, doing something being creative because it's not going to work. And it's like you're self-sabotaging right away. And then of course, like, oh, okay, well, I'm a creative. I don't really have any business experience. That solidifies that deal. We're no longer going to even try. And then if you do, remember Jen said initially, the stories we tell ourselves, those stories always get evidence as well. They always, when you say something like that then to yourself, then you're actually looking for that evidence to prove you're right. And you don't allow yourself that chance to say, hey, maybe that's actually not just right. Maybe it's just my own experience right now. It's not the truth, the whole truth. It's just my little world. And then if I try something different and I get some different help and put myself in a different position where I actually can truly either, like, first of all, believe, but secondly, use the tools, and thirdly, have a plan that you can follow that actually does work, then hopefully you'll see a different reality. And that's actually why we want to talk about two students of ours to this podcast, because they're really, really good examples of how they approached us. And when they came, they even at least knew, yes, I want to be part of this course and the Profit by Design Academy, but they were so scared. And they really weren't sure. And they weren't the scared that it might work, scared that it won't work, scared of the, implications of, will they even like be shown out, right? Like as if like they don't even really be like in the group because they don't want people to realize how bad they are or how bad they thought they were. But they're amazing. And they just needed some help to understand. And I apologize, I've got a phone on here. They just needed the help to understand what they needed to do, and then they were both perfectly capable of doing it. And that's actually, there's many examples like that, but today we're going to talk about these two ladies in general and in particular.
Yeah. And so the points that we do want to cover, and we're going to talk about within their stories and sort of interweave everything, is the mindset of creatives and how being an introvert can't, like, some people think being an introvert is a bad thing, but being an introvert definitely has some really great advantages. And being an introvert doesn't mean that
we're introverts.
Yeah. And being an introvert doesn't mean that you're not able to learn the side of business or actually be a successful business owner. And then also self-doubt and having sort of like, I can say also from my own personal experience that being an introvert and then also having self-doubt is this like crazy package put together, because
bad formula.
you're scared to ask the questions, because you're an introvert, and then you also are doubting yourself, and you know that you really truly want the help and you want to ask the questions, but because you're an introvert, you are worried that maybe what you ask is wrong, or that you're not going to understand, or that people won't, like, they will think that you're lower than them or something like that. Like, it's real. Those are real feelings that people feel when they feel almost embarrassed about the fact and paralyzed, about the fact that the numbers scare you, or business scares you, or that you just don't understand something. And then also just not being comfortable in general is just like, if you don't understand something or you're not comfortable, it's like speaking Greek, like way over your head.
I know.
And you don't even know where to start to even ask the question.
You know those Charlie Brown sessions where they're in the classroom and the teacher's going, mom, 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 mom. That would be me. Like, I want to learn the stuff. I want to get, really successful at what I, wanted to achieve. And I was like so like paralyzed and overwhelmed by the worry and then the anxiety that's how it always sounded when people were actually teaching me stuff. And I just had to really understand that I'm okay, right?
Yeah. No, you always had to sort of ground yourself.
And I was in the back of the room all the time, and I never asked questions. It was like, I hope they ask this. In the meantime, the whole session's gone, and it's like, no one asked my question. It's like, because I didn't ask the question.
Yep. Or I've had this thing happen to me before where you're so like worried about your question that you're like repeating it over and over and over again in your head, so you get it like perfect, and then as soon as you're ready to ask your question, like, it's not relevant anymore. Or like class has ended and you're like, shoot, like I finally got the confidence. We laugh, but the thing is that that has actually happened to me, and it's a very serious thing. Definitely. And so what we have done with these two students that we're going to be talking about is that we've made them feel comfortable and made them understand that they're not alone, and that these things are real feelings and people actually feel those things. And to overcome them, you have to ask questions. You kind of have to put yourself out there and be a little bit more comfortable. But in our community and in our space, I was going to say, in our community, in our space, we always tell everybody that there is no wrong answer, no wrong question or no stupid question, and they're in a safe space, that they should feel 100% comfortable with whatever question it may be. And because they felt that comfortable within our community and within our courses and within our space, that they were finally able to like open up, and now they're crushing it. Like they have really great businesses that are flourishing on Zazzle, even within like crazy times of COVID. Like they were making their best months ever. And it's just because they realized that they needed to know what the numbers were, even though it scared them, or even though they didn't feel comfortable, or even though they didn't know them at the beginning, and they were much more interested in like the creative side of things, or even just like the whole, making money online, dream life type of thing. They wanted to do that, but they needed to know and understand what the numbers were so that they could actually analyze stuff.
Yeah, not only what their numbers were in their business, but also just what numbers did they need to know. And when we're not aware of what's necessary, because we just don't know, we actually build up things more so than what we probably need to, right? Because of the fear of the unknown. It's a very common term, and it's very relevant, because if you're fearful of what you don't know, then it stops you from actually moving forward. Yep. And sometimes after you actually, if that fear, if you can overcome that fear, you can actually realize that the numbers or whatever it is that you needed, it wasn't actually as fearful as we thought. And that's been a big learning lesson for Jen and I as we've moved forward, creating this business for us, because we had to learn the hard way. We had to do it all ourselves. Whereas now there's this wonderful, safe community that we've generated. And why have we generated that? Because we said this would be awesome for if we were just starting out. This is what we would want, and we would have loved that while we were starting out, because we really struggled. Yeah. And so, and I got a little emotional there, because I also feel that as like I can really relate to that, and so can Jen. So if someone's really struggling, my heart goes out to you, because it's not you, it's just the situation you're in, right? Yeah. And you just need to change the situation so that you can understand and allow that conversation to happen to help you move through it. And once you move through it, you realize it's actually not so bad, because you got the help and the support you need, and the acknowledgement that you're in that space, right? Because it's really real. So, okay, where do you want to go with this?
Well, we can talk about Wendy and Judy. Yeah. And both of them were on Zazzle actually for quite a bit of time, trying to figure out things before they came into our courses. And if you actually listened to our previous podcast, we talked about knowing, throwing spaghetti at the walls and seeing if it sticks, basically.
So that's podcast episode number 31, just so you know, from struggle to success in e-commerce. So we're going to put that in the show notes.
Yeah. And so in that podcast, we showcased two other students who had also been on Zazzle for a long time trying to figure things out, and they just didn't know where to go. They didn't have a proper plan. And so Wendy and Judy actually, were on Zazzle, and they did somewhat have a plan, a quote unquote, a plan-ish. They were making money, but they weren't making the money that they needed to, because they didn't actually look at their numbers very well, and they didn't actually assess the situation on what was going on. And Judy actually mentioned to me that she had a paycheck in the later months in 2020 that had
from
Zazzle that superseded all of her earnings combined over I can't remember if it was 5 years. I have to quote myself now, but of all the time that she had been on Zazzle, she had made a certain amount of money, and it was a couple $1,000s, but that was years of it being on Zazzle. And then in 1 month after our training and being in our courses, she made more money in 1 month than she had in all of her years on Zazzle. And it was because
she was freaking out.
Yeah.
She was like, I can't believe this is possible. It's like you got your paycheck or your payout from Zazzle. I don't even like to call it a paycheck, because we're not working for Zazzle. We're working for ourselves. Yeah. And she earned it. And it was she was so excited.
She was so excited. And she's just going to skyrocket this year too. But it's because she actually now treats it as a business. And it's so amazing to see her when she comes to our sessions. Yeah. She's actually in our private coach, in our creative CEO mastermind. And she always tells us, she's like, what would Elka and Jen say? Like, if I'm sitting here on my computer and I'm doing my thing on Zazzle, what would they tell me to do? And it's the cutest thing, because we told her a lot of stuff in terms of how to work her business, and then now she's actually really getting into the rhythm. And
it's really important. I want to cut Jen off for a minute, because we told her in a way that she was able to like work with her, right? Not like in her language or anything like that. It's not that we're like talking to her in a certain way. It's more that we understood how she needed to understand how to do the business, right? And it's that extra communication so that it makes it feel really like proper. In the I don't know how to explain it, but it's like so that she got it, right? Not that we just told her a whole bunch of stuff and it still went over her head, just like what used to happen to me. It was like, mama, and the classroom was like, I just need to know what to do, but I don't understand what you're saying. And so I totally am empathetic to people who are like, not that we're stupid, we're really smart, but we need to understand how creatives process information and how it relates to how we can understand it. I'm a very visual person, so like and the same thing with Judy. We just had to explain it to her in the way that she needed to hear it, so that she now gets it, and it's like, go girl.
Yeah. And basically the same with Wendy too, that she was on Zazzle for years, and then as soon as she, came into our space and said, I really need help and I need to, like, I want to make this work, like, please help me. And where she actually felt confident to ask the questions and understand that she needed to ask certain questions, because as I said at the beginning of this podcast, sometimes we're just very nervous about even asking questions or even knowing what the right questions are,
exactly.
Right? Yeah. And so we're just extremely proud of both Wendy and Judy. And so Wendy has now reached her lifetime earnings of over $65,000 on Zazzle, which is awesome.
I'm doing the snap because that's our thing, right? If someone's really doing well. And same with Judy, one paycheck. It's awesome.
Yeah. And then now Judy has hit over 40K on Zazzle, which is awesome. And so we're just extremely excited. Both of them are on their way to almost hitting gold, which is really cool.
Zazzle,
so if
we
you
have to explain gold.
if you know what gold pro designer status is, pro designer status means when you hit certain income, take-home income, like earnings levels on Zazzle and in U.S. sales. And so Judy and Wendy are about to hit gold, which means that they've made over $100,000 in U.S. sales, earnings. And then that means that they've actually sold over $1 million of Zazzle product in sales, which is awesome.
Yes.
So we're just extremely excited to see what comes from for them in the future, because we're working really closely with them, and we just can't wait to see their accomplishments. It's going to be awesome. And so I could just like shut our computer down.
I have so many things that are always buzzing around. Okay.
But we just first of all want to make sure that everybody knows that not knowing the numbers or feeling awkward or uncomfortable or scared or nervous or all of like the negative terms that you hear associated with business. Like, when you hear, I need to build my own business, and then your like skin crawls because like, I have to deal with all of the numbers and analytics and like I'm actually sweating right now.
I get a lot of like palpitations. I start to get anxiety.
Because it's sometimes scary, as creatives, especially as creatives, we want to just have fun and we want to create and we want to do our thing. But if you really want to build a profitable business, it has to go hand in hand.
You have to know your numbers.
Yes.
If you've ever watched Shark Tank and you see Kevin O'Leary, he goes, what are the numbers? What are the numbers? And like everyone's going, they're like
glazing over.
Deer in the headlights. But it's true. And that's actually why the man is so successful and all the businesses he runs are so successful. It's because ultimately we have to take ownership, right? We have to actually know the numbers of our business.
Yeah.
And it's not just like so that you can brag to see how much, millions of dollars you've made. It's because you need to know that it's being tracked, and that you need to know that, like if you're doing certain things really well, we've got to make sure that you keep doing those, right? And if the numbers are bad, then you've got to stop doing that thing and do something else. And so that's why you want to know your numbers. It's not just because you have to be on Shark Tank, which you don't need to be. But that's really important, because that's truly how people are successful. And that's all we need to do, is we have to know our numbers. And of course that leads to other things, right? Then we take action based on those numbers.
Yeah.
And So they can't be scary, and we make them not scary. And that's why we want to label this podcast as a title and say, well, we have actually initially said no numbers, no problem, but people probably wouldn't understand that. But no business skills, no problems. And I want to take it that one step further, right? Because even though it's knowing your numbers, that means you're knowing your business, right? And you have the business skills to be able to do something about it. And that's the kudos that we have for these two women that are doing so incredibly well, because Judy and Wendy started to understand their numbers and then acted accordingly and just blew their businesses up because they did the right things based on their numbers. Yeah.
So to recap, business skills does not mean that they have to be scary, or knowing your numbers doesn't mean that it has to be scary. Knowing your numbers is really a good thing. And sometimes it's just the stories that we tell ourselves because we think that we're not good enough, or that we have, these emotions associated with business and numbers and all that like scary stuff. And it shouldn't be scary. So, for our own examples,
and it
our
isn't
own
scary when
from its I want to say from our own
we make it not scary.
We make it not scary. Yeah. Based on our own experience, we know that it can be scary, but it's not, and we learned how to not make it scary, and then also our students' experience too. And we just want to inspire you through this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if you're not part of our courses, just make sure that you understand that we if you want to take a good look at what's happening with you, if you're scared, it's because you haven't found out, right? And we don't know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. And if we do know, maybe it's actually a lot different than what we anticipated or what we thought. And it turns out it may not be that scary. But then if it still is scary, do it anyway.
Yep.
And it's like Rachel Hollis. It's like, I am comfortable being uncomfortable. And why? Because that's how you move forward. That's how you stay alive. That's how you build something out of nothing that you want to make, right? Like everyone if you're watching or listening, depending on what you're doing, where you're seeing us or whether you're listening to us on a podcast platform, you're here and you're listening because you want to change something. You want to change your current life. You want to change the money that you're making to live a different life. That's it. That's all. That's the bottom line. And you want to change it by doing something different. Well, and so we're all excited. Oh, I want to make more money. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then it's like, oh, but you got to make a business out of it. It's like, holy smokes, I'm now really scared. So then all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe not. But why? Why did you just stop? And this is why, because you feel this fear of, I don't know how to run a business. I don't know how to do my numbers. I'm creative. I've never even done my taxes. I just give it to somebody. That kind of thing makes you think, oh, then that means I can't do this. But you can, right? We obviously can't make any income claim statements, which is really important that you understand this. It's all up to you. But that's where it starts, too, is up to you. Make that decision. Decide, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And then find out how you can help yourself to get there. Yeah. And we believe in you, whether you buy your courses or not. That's the whole point. People keep asking us, why are you selling your courses? Because it's actually not just a course, it's a business plan. And so this is really important, that when you get into our community and you start to do our signature Profit by Design Academy, you'll realize this is way more than a course. This is like Elka and Jen walking us through how to set up our own business. And that's what we want for you, because we've struggled for so long. And we've experienced this fear and anxiety, and we were too afraid to ask. And so years went by. Yeah. And I was like, finally, it's like, okay, that's enough. Yeah. I'm going to ask, and I'm going to get the help I need. And that's when things started moving forward. So I hope that for you. I hope that you listen to this and resonate with that and go like, okay, you know what? I'm deathly afraid, but Jen and Elka did it. And Wendy and Judy did it. So I'm going to give it a try. Yeah. And I'm going to not let anything get in the way. Make sure I give it my best shot.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur Podcast. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.